Training racing pigeons to break. Breaking refers to when a racing pigeon separates from the flock and follows its own course. Typically, within a flock, there is a leader guiding the birds on a straight path, occasionally switching positions with a few others. However, the remaining birds in the flock are essentially following the leaders. When we talk about breaking, we are referring to the act of leading. Training pigeons to break goes against their natural instincts as they are social creatures that prefer to stay together for security. Young birds, in particular, struggle with breaking because it goes against their survival instincts. In nature, predators tend to target solitary birds, assuming they might be sick or injured. Nevertheless, our goal in pigeon racing is to produce winners and leaders. Training pigeons to break means training them to follow their own course, separate from the flock. Developing leaders and birds that break involves two methods. The first method is single tossing, which requires releasing the bird on its own. In single tossing, the bird must rely on its instincts and choose its own path home. This training technique can be time-consuming, especially if you have a large flock, but it is highly valuable. The second method involves tossing birds in small groups. Small group tossing is often more effective than single tossing. It saves time and allows birds to compete with each other, striving to be the leader. Start by dividing your flock into 3 groups and release them. During this toss, there should be at least 3 leaders, and often more, as the birds compete for the lead position. Later, you can further divide them into smaller groups of less than 10 and eventually down to groups of 3. This way, you are developing leaders and nurturing the instinct that will eventually lead to birds that break and follow their own course. When tossing small groups or individual pigeons, it is important to prevent them from regrouping into one large flock. Sometimes, a flock may appear to go out of sight but then return over the release point after 10 to 15 minutes. To prevent this, you can release the groups at different time intervals and different distances. Choose a training distance and find a nearby road that runs perpendicular to it. Release one group, wait until they are out of sight, and then drive 1 to 8 kilometers to release another group. Repeat this process until all the groups have been released. By varying the release points, you can discourage the pigeons from regrouping into one larger flock. Remember, training racing pigeons to break requires patience, time, and effort. By utilizing these techniques, you can develop leaders and birds that break, ultimately increasing your chances of success in racing competitions. Understanding the difference between breaking and leading. Breaking and leading are two different concepts in pigeon racing. A leader is a bird that takes the front position in the flock but still follows the general direction of the group. On the other hand, a bird that breaks is an independent flyer that chooses its own course and separates from the flock. Both breaking and leading involve following one's own course, which is the ultimate goal of training racing pigeons. It is important to train pigeons to follow their instincts and navigate their way home while maintaining their individuality. Single tossing technique. Single tossing is a valuable training technique that helps pigeons develop the ability to follow their own course. In this method, the bird is released on its own, without the presence of other pigeons. This forces the bird to rely on its instincts and make independent decisions to find its way back home. Single tossing can be time-consuming, especially if you have a large flock, but it is an effective way to train pigeons to break and develop their individuality. To implement single tossing, you need to designate a specific location as the release point. Gradually increase the distance from the release point as the pigeons become more adept at finding their way back. It is essential to monitor the performance of each bird during single tossing and make note of their ability to break away from the flock. Small group tossing technique. Tossing pigeons in small groups is another effective method to develop leaders and birds that break. In this technique, you divide your flock into smaller groups and release them separately. This creates a competitive environment where the birds strive to be the leader of their respective groups. By gradually reducing the group size, you can further enhance the development of individuality and breaking instincts in racing pigeons. Start by dividing your flock into 3 groups and release them at different intervals. Observe their behavior during the toss, as there should be at least 3 leaders in each group. These leaders are the birds that demonstrate a strong desire to take the lead position. As you progress with the training, you can break down the groups into smaller ones, eventually reaching groups of 3 pigeons. This process allows you to develop leaders and nurture the instinct that leads to birds breaking away from the flock. Preventing regrouping. During training, it is crucial to prevent pigeons from regrouping into one large flock after being released in small groups or individually. Regrouping can undermine the development of breaking instincts and hinder the training progress. To prevent regrouping, you can implement certain strategies. One approach is to release the groups or individual pigeons at different time intervals. By staggering the releases, you create a time gap between each group's departure, reducing the likelihood of them merging back into a single flock. Additionally, you can vary the release distances by choosing different roads perpendicular to the training direction. Release one group, drive a few kilometers away, and release another group. Repeat this process until all the groups have been released. The varying distances and release points help to maintain the separation and discourage regrouping. Patience and consistency. Training racing pigeons to break and develop leaders requires patience and consistency. It is a gradual process that requires repeated training sessions over an extended period. Each pigeon has its own learning curve and pace of development, so it is important not to rush the training process. Be consistent with your training routine, providing regular opportunities for the birds to practice breaking and following their own course. Furthermore, maintain a positive training environment for the pigeons. Create a routine that includes proper feeding, loft management, and exercise. Pigeons that are well cared for and in good physical condition are more likely to perform better in training and races. In conclusion, training racing pigeons to break and develop leaders is an essential aspect of pigeon racing. It involves teaching pigeons to follow their instincts and choose their own course, separate from the flock. Single tossing and small group tossing techniques are effective methods to develop breaking instincts and nurture leaders within your flock. By implementing strategies to prevent regrouping and maintaining a consistent training routine, you can increase the chances of success in racing competitions. Remember, training racing pigeons requires patience, time, and dedication, but the rewards of having birds that break and lead can be truly fulfilling in the world of pigeon racing. It is all to do with red blood cells and oxygen in the blood. Without that, a pigeon will not race well, or an athlete will not win a race, if he has low oxygen in his blood. The above is fact and is 100% science. There are a few things you can do to improve your chances of winning at racing pigeons. One of the most important things is to learn as much as you can about the sport. You'll need to know the different types of pigeons, how to train them, and how to race them. Another key factor is practice. You'll need to be able to fly your pigeons competently in order to win races. And, of course, you'll need to have the funds to invest in racing pigeons and other racing equipment.